Welcome to page 2 of the notes for Skill 5C, Adding and Subtracting Mixed Numbers. In the last notes page, we focused on adding mixed numbers, but today I want to focus on how we can subtract. The good news is this skill is really similar to what we were doing for adding, but there are some slight differences, so keep an eye out for ways in which you have to be a little bit more creative and a little more real when it comes to subtracting. So here's the big idea. When subtracting mixed number fractions, you subtract the whole numbers and subtract the fractional pieces. That's just like when we're adding. However, sometimes you will need to break apart a whole number into fractional pieces in order to subtract. Let's look at an example of that so you can see what I mean. So here we have the subtraction problem 2 1/2 minus 1 2/3. So I've got 2 1/2 already here. I'm going to color those in. I can imagine I have 2 1/2 of something, 2 1/2 cookies. And I want to take away 1 2/3. Oops, let me finish coloring in my 2 1/2 so they look like pattern blocks. There we go. Now I want to take away 1 2/3. Taking away the 1 is easy. I can just cross this out. Now, when I look at this and I want to take away 2/3, that gets a little bit harder. So if I'm looking here at my half, that's not big enough to take away 2/3. So I'm going to come over here to my whole number and I'm going to cut it up. To cut it into thirds, I draw a dot in the middle and then I'll connect like this. And then I'm going to skip this first point and go to the next one and connect. Skip the next point and then connect. This is how you could draw cutting up a whole pattern block into thirds. Now I want to take away 2 of those thirds, so I can cross out this one and cross out this one. This leaves me with no whole numbers left, but I have a half left and I have a third left. Now, you might look at those and say, I don't know what to do with those because I can't really say a half and a third to understand what the fraction means. But fortunately, because you've been cutting things up into equivalent denominators, you might recognize I can cut those up into sixths. Now I can do that with drawing. I can cut this one up into triangles, and I can take my half and cut it into triangles, and see that I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 triangles left. So I have 5 pieces, and if you remember, if I turn those into green triangles, they're each worth a sixth. So by drawing, I can see that if I take away one half or take away one whole and I take away 2/3, I should be left with what's equivalent to 5/6. Now that's the strategy for drawing it. And as we've talked earlier, that's not often how we do fractions. Usually we're on paper and pencil and solving them with our mathematical solving skills. So let's look at the strategy for doing what we did with the pattern blocks, but just using our numbers. So for our solving strategy, just like anytime we're adding or subtracting fractions, our first job is to find the LCM, the least common multiple. And since I'm working with halves and thirds, I need to find the LCM for 2 and 3. So here's my 2, and I can start listing multiples. 2, 4, 6. And I can do the same for 3. 3, 6, and there we go. We found the LCM. We can rewrite these as sixths. So I'm going to come down here to my original problem, 2 1/2 minus 1 2/3. If I want to turn my halves into sixths, I need to multiply by 3. My whole number stays the same, so I still have 2, but now I have 2 3/6. Bring down my minus sign, and now I want to turn 1 2/3 into sixths. So I know if I want to turn these into sixths, I need to multiply my numerator and my denominator by 2. My whole number stays the same, and now I have 4 sixths. So my new subtraction problem is 1 and 3 sixths minus 1 and 4 sixths. Now hopefully you notice that there's a problem. I can't subtract 4 sixths away from 3 sixths. There aren't enough pieces. The solution to that is I'm going to take my 2 and I'm going to break it apart. I want to break it, I'm going to leave one of the numbers whole. The other one I want to cut up into sixths. I want to cut it up into 6 sixths. So I have one whole number and 6 sixths and 3 more sixths. When I get done messing with that, I have turned my 2 and 3 sixths into 1 and 9 sixths. You can think of it like we did up here with our other fraction piece. I can cut that fraction up so that I have enough pieces to do my subtracting. I just took my 2 and I took away one of my whole numbers and chopped it up into sixths. So now my 2 and 3 sixths I have cut up differently and I rewrote it as 1 and 9 sixths. And from that I want to subtract, there we go, 1 and 4 sixths. So I can do my subtracting. 9 sixths minus 4 sixths. That gives me 5 sixths. And 1 minus 1 is 0. Now that 0 is not really doing anything, so I'm just going to write it as 5 sixths. And you can see that's exactly what we got when we were drawing our fractions up here. The big idea when doing this is we're still finding the LCM like usual. We're still creating equivalent fractions like usual. But in step 3, when you go to subtract the fractional pieces, if you don't have enough, you have to borrow, just like you've learned for other subtraction problems. The only difference is when you subtract with decimals, you're always cutting them up into 10. But with fractions, you have to cut it up into whatever fractional piece you're working with. So for this problem, I was working with sixths, and I had to cut my whole number up into sixths. Let's try a couple more practice problems. This can be a harder concept, so if it's still feeling a little confusing, let's try a couple more together to see if we can make it clearer. All right, so here for this next problem, we have 5 and 1/4 minus 2 and 1/3. Let's start by looking at our denominators. We have fourths and thirds, so we should recognize that we need to find the least common multiple. 4 and 3. 4, 8, 12, 3, 6, 9, 12. Aha, my least common multiple is 12. As you're working through this unit, you might start to recognize patterns. You might know anytime I've got thirds and fourths, my least common multiple will be 12. You might find yourself getting faster at that. All right, so I have 5 and 1/4 minus 2 and 1/3, and I want to rewrite those as 12ths. So to do that, I need to multiply my fourths times 3 over 3. My whole number stays the same, but now I have 5 and 3/12 minus, I want to write my 2 and 1/3 as 12ths, so I'm going to multiply my numerator and my denominator by 4, and now I get 2 and 4/12. All right, I'm getting ready to subtract my fractions, but I'm noticing I have 3/12 minus 4/12. I don't yet have enough twelfths to do the subtracting, so I'm going to have to borrow from my whole number. I'm going to take away 1 and I'm going to cut it up into twelfths. I'm going to do this in a different color to make it clear what I'm doing. If you have an extra pen of a different color, you can try writing it in a different color to see if that helps you. If you don't, that's okay, but it definitely helps me. Let's see if I can scroll real quick. There we go. All right. So I'm going to break my 5 up. I'm going to take away one whole number from my 5. So I'm going to use it as a 4 and 12 twelfths. I just split up my 5 into the whole number 4 and 12 twelfths. And then I also had 3 twelfths. Now I can combine all of that together. I'm going to rewrite 5 and 3 twelfths as 4 and 15 twelfths. All I did was bring down my whole number, and then I combined 12 twelfths plus 3 more twelfths. All right. Now that I've done that, I can bring down the rest of my subtraction problem. Bring down my subtraction sign and my 2 and 4 twelfths. Now I'm doing 4 and 15 twelfths minus 2 and 4 twelfths. I didn't get more stuff. I just rewrote my 5 and 3 twelfths as 4 and 15 twelfths. I basically took a whole number and cut it up into twelfths so I had enough pieces to do my subtracting. Whoops. All right, I can subtract my fractions. 15 twelfths minus 4 twelfths gives me 11 twelfths. And 4 minus 2 is 2. So my answer is 2 and 11 twelfths. All right, let's try another one. Now I'm looking at 6 and 3 tenths minus 3 and 4 fifths. Looking at my denominators, I can see that they're not the same. I'm going to use my least common multiple to figure out the best denominator, but I'm guessing some of you already spotted it without even needing to write down your LCM. But just in case, I'm going to set up my LCM. 5 and 10. There we go. If you're noticing that I didn't write a very long list, it's because I knew that 5 could be turned into 10 by multiplying by 2. All right, so now I'm going to take my fraction, 6 and 3 tenths, minus 3 and 4 fifths, and I'm going to rewrite it as tenths. Now 6 and 3 tenths is already tenths, so all I have to do is bring that down and do my subtraction symbol. To turn 4 fifths into tenths, I'm going to multiply my denominator and my numerator by 2. My whole number stays the same, but now I have 3 and 8 tenths. All right, so looking at my subtracting, I have 3 tenths minus 8 tenths. That's not going to work. If I only have 3 pieces, I can't take away 8 pieces. So I need to do some breaking apart of my whole number. I'm going to break up 6 into 5, and then I'm going to make my whole number. I'm going to cut it up into tenths. So I'm breaking up 6 into 5 and 10 tenths. I took one of my whole numbers and I cut it up into tenths. And then I have 3 more tenths. So all together, I can rewrite that as 5 and 13 tenths. If you're having a hard time picturing what that could mean, all I'm doing is if I had 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 3 tenths. Ooh, it's going to be hard to draw tenths. That last one was no good. Let me draw that line again. There we go. If I had 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 3 tenths, All I did was take one of my other whole numbers and I cut it up into tenths too. So I still have my 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 whole numbers, but now I have 13 tenths to use. I'm just taking my whole number and I cut one of them up. Sometimes we pretend it's like you have a pizza and you need more slices, so you just get your pizza cutter and cut up one of your whole pizzas. All right, so my 6 and 3 tenths has been rewritten as 5 and 13 tenths. Now I have enough tenths to do my subtracting. I'm going to bring down the rest of the problem and do my subtracting. 13 tenths minus 8 tenths gives me 5 tenths. 5 minus 3 is 2. 2 and